A scheme before its time. A digital health mission needs to get all the fundamentals of the ecosystem right. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has announced the National Digital Health Mission, the most salient aspect of which is that all citizens will have the option of voluntarily opting for a health ID, a 14-digit health identification number that will uniquely identify every citizen and will be a repository of their medical history. Illustratively, it will contain details of every test, every disease, the doctors visited, the medicines taken and the diagnosis. The portability this offers implies a person will, in theory, never have to haul around their reports. The doctor who is examining the patient can give more well-informed advice because it is possible that patients may not consider aspects of their medical history relevant to share with the doctor, or sometimes may forget about them, but which may be valuable for a better diagnosis. This ID can be created by using a person's basic details and mobile number or Aadhaar number, and there will presumably be an app acting as a convenient interface. As snazzy as all of this sounds, a digital health aid right now is really a solution looking for a problem. There is no clear justification that the immobility of medical records is an insurmountable obstacle to the provision of affordable, high-quality healthcare in India. The challenge of healthcare in India, as decades of research and the experience with the novel coronavirus pandemic have shown, can be expressed quite simply. There are too few hospitals with trained staff to cater to all Indians. But expanding the healthcare system will not be easy. India's federal structure, the size of its population, and a large rural one at that, the cost of researching, finding and buying appropriate drugs and treatment, competing systems of medicine and the very challenging nature of health itself, mean that the issues are manifold. The graver problem is that the technocratic sheen of a digital health aid hides a mammoth store of personal data, which in the absence of a privacy law and little public awareness and control over their data, could be open to misuse. There is the danger that any large private insurance company could use sophisticated algorithms across the health and other databases to construct risk profiles for people and make access to affordable insurance difficult. Also, data mining can prioritize certain rich demographics for their services and direct public and private resources to people who can afford a high premium for their services rather than to those who need them but cannot pay as much. For a digital health ecosystem to work, it is important that the fundamentals be fixed from the ground up. A fund without a care for the RTI. The government's claim that the PM Cares Fund is not a public authority is unacceptable. It may not be an exaggeration to say that when it comes to seeking answers and information under the Right to Information (RTI) Act, the Prime Minister's office, PMO, is consistent in putting up a screen. The manner in which the Prime Minister's Citizen Assistance and Relief in Emergency Situations (PM Cares) Fund was set up, with its acronym created to publicize the point that the Prime Minister cares for people, shows a bypassing of the statutory obligations of a public authority. The other funds. A statutorily constituted National Disaster Response Fund, NDRF, which was established under the Disaster Management (DM) Act of 2005, is deliberately ignored while a new, controversial, unanswerable, and non-accountable vehicle is created. Its character is not spelt out till today. The NDRF is mandated to be accountable and answerable under the RTI Act, being a public authority, and auditable by the Controller and Auditor General of India. The government seems to consider statutory provisions for inquiry and information seeking to be embarrassing obstacles. The DM Act provided for a disaster response fund, state and district level funds, besides the national level, and also to collect and use the donations at the local level, with mandatory transparency and audit provisions. The PM Cares Fund centralizes the collection of donations and its utility, which is not only against the federal character but also practically inconvenient. There is the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund operative since the days of Jawaharlal Nehru. The website says, https://bit.ly/39 in pursuance of an appeal by the then Prime Minister, P.T. Jawaharlal Nehru in January 1948, the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund, PMNRF, was established with public contributions to assist displaced persons from Pakistan. The resources are now utilized primarily to render immediate relief to families of those killed in natural calamities. and to the victims of the major accidents and riots. Assistance from the PMNRF is also rendered to partially defray the expenses for medical treatment. The fund is recognized as a trust under the Income Tax Act, and the same is managed by the Prime Minister or multiple delegates for national causes. The fact is that there is substantial money also left in the PMNRF. But the Narendra Modi government does not want to use it. The PMNRF has the President of India and the Leader of Opposition also as trustees. The centre now considers it as another obstacle and has created a new trust with the Prime Minister and his ministers only. While both funds, the NDRF and the PMNRF, have been relegated to the back burner, the PM Cares Fund is in the limelight. Change of guard. As Japan's new PM, Kishida will need to address its economic woes and inequalities. The election of Fumio Kishida as the ruling Liberal Democratic Party (LDP) leader opens a new chapter in Japan's otherwise status quoist politics at a time when its geopolitical prominence is growing amid China's rapid rise and the United States' pivot to the region. Mr. Kishida, a former foreign minister, is certain to be elected the next prime minister when parliament convenes next week, as the LDP controls the legislature. Japan was thrown into a leadership contest after the unpopular Prime Minister, Yoshihide Suga, announced his resignation earlier this month amid mounting public anger over his government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic and the associated economic woes. The traditionally conservative, pro-business LDP, which has dominated Japan's post-war politics, was apparently not confident of going to the parliamentary polls in November under the leadership of Mr. Suga. His approval rating had plunged from 60% in January to below 30% in August. In the initial round of the voting on Wednesday among 4 candidates to lead the party, Mr. Kishida was neck and neck with Taro Kono, a serving minister in the Suga government, who enjoyed higher popularity among the party's rank and file. But in the runoff, most legislators supported Mr. Kishida, who had the backing of the LDP establishment. Mr. Kishida's most immediate big task is leading the party to the parliamentary elections within weeks. With the COVID situation easing, the LDP appears to be confident of victory under the new leadership. But winning elections would only be the first of a host of key challenges awaiting Mr. Kishida. He needs to come up with a program to lift the world's third-largest economy out of its sluggishness. Even when the US and China had surged back to growth after COVID lockdowns, Japan's economy continued to falter under the long national emergency declared to fight the virus. Despite the LDP's conservative past, Mr. Kishida had taken a center-left position on the economy during the campaign. He promised increased spending to revive the economy and asked corporations to distribute more of their profits to middle-class workers. What is to be seen is whether these were instances of mere election-time rhetoric or if Mr. Kishida would turn them into policies to address Japan's economic woes and widening inequality. A tougher challenge would be in the realm of foreign policy. After announcing the AUKUS alliance with the UK and Australia, under which Australia would be supplied nuclear submarines, the US has made it clear that the Indo-Pacific is the new theater of great power rivalry. Japan, an American ally in the Pacific with deep economic ties with China, would find it difficult to sit on the fence for long. Mr. Taliban tell US to stop using drones. Reuters. The Taliban on Wednesday warned of consequences if the United States did not stop flying drones over Afghan airspace. The US has violated all international rights and laws as well as its commitments made to the Taliban in Doha, Qatar, with the operation of these drones in Afghanistan, the Taliban said in a statement on Twitter. We call on all countries, especially United States, to treat Afghanistan in light of international rights, laws and commitments, in order to prevent any negative consequences. US officials were not immediately available to comment. The Islamist militia swept back into power in Afghanistan last month after most US and other Western troops left the country. Kishida set to be next Japan PM after winning ruling party poll. He will be confirmed as the new premier in a vote in parliament on October 4. Agence France Presse Tokyo. Japan's ruling party elected former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida its new leader on Wednesday, setting him on course to become the next Prime Minister of the world's third-largest economy. The soft-spoken centrist defeated popular vaccine chief Taro Kono in an unusually close race to succeed Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, who is stepping down after just a year in office. Mr. Kishida, 64, will be confirmed as the new premier in a vote in Parliament on October 4 and will then lead the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, into general elections that must happen by November. Speaking after his win, he called on members to show the public that the LDP has been reborn, and appeal for their support. The scion of a political family from Hiroshima, Mr. Kishida has long targeted the Prime Minister's office and ran unsuccessfully for party leader last year, losing out to Mr. Suga. He became the first candidate to step into the race this time around and ran on a platform of pandemic stimulus while carrying a suggestion box to events to receive proposals from citizens. "My skill is to really listen to people," he said after his win on Wednesday, promising to work for a bright future for Japan. Tight race. The race was a tight one, with Mr. Kishida edging Mr. Kono by just a single vote in the first round before taking the second with 257 votes to Mr. Kono's 170. Two other candidates, hawkish right-winger Sanae Takaichi and feminist former Gender Equality Minister Seiko Nora, did not advance beyond the first-round vote. A former LDP policy chief, Mr. Kishida sought to capitalize on public discontent over Mr. Suga's response to the pandemic, which has seen his government's approval ratings slump to record lows. "We need to keep seriously pursuing coronavirus measures by all means. I need to create an atmosphere in which we can address the crisis together," he said. On foreign policy, he pledged to protect basic values led by democracy and show our presence by contributing to global challenges, led by the environment issue. Nipah antibodies found in bat samples in Kerala. Special Correspondent Thiruvananthapuram. Nipah virus antibodies, antibodies, were detected in bat samples collected by the National Institute of Virology, NIV, Pune, from Kodayattur and Tamarasheri in Kozhikode district near the Panchayat where Nipah infection was confirmed last month. The samples were collected by the NIV as part of the Nipah outbreak investigation. A sample belonging to the Pteropus species, collected from Tamarasheri, was found to have Nipah antibodies, while the same was detected in another sample from the Roust species collected from Kodayattur. The results of over 50 bat samples collected as part of the outbreak investigation were still awaited, Kerala Health Minister Veena George said on Wednesday. Given the current evidence, it would be logical to conclude that the Nipah outbreak in Kozhikode did originate from bats, even though the authorities are still in the dark as to the route of virus transmission from bats to humans, Ms. George said. Probe shows use of toxic material in firecrackers, SC. Why shouldn't manufacturers face contempt action? Legal correspondent, New Delhi. The Supreme Court on Wednesday said a preliminary inquiry by the CBI into the firecracker industry, including in Tamil Nadu, revealed rampant violation of its ban on use of toxic ingredients like barium and its salts. In March 2020, the court ordered the CBI Joint Director in Chennai to conduct a detailed probe into allegations of violation of the court ban in 2018. The CBI had filed a report in a sealed cover in the court. A bench led by Justice M.R. Shah, referring to the report, observed that a chemical analysis of the samples of finished and semi-finished firecrackers and raw materials taken from the manufacturers showed barium content. The court said loose quantities of barium were purchased from the market. Firecracker covers did not show the manufacture or expiry dates. The court discussed why the manufacturers should not be asked to show cause, why contempt action should not be taken against them. Every day there is a celebration, but you should also be mindful of the people living around you. People who have asthma, Justice Shah remarked. The court posted the case for further hearing on October 6. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court prima facie brushed aside the manufacturer's contention that thousands of employees earn their livelihood in the industry. Justice Shah retorted, "We have to balance between employment, unemployment and the right to life and health of citizens. We cannot sacrifice the lives of many for a few. Our prime focus is the right to life of innocent people." The case gained significance with the onset of the wedding season and festivals like the Shahara and Deepavali. Every day, There is a violation in this regard. In religious processions, political rallies, Justice Shah, accompanied by Justice A.S. Bopanna on the bench, pointed out. He noted that the court had to fix liability on the authorities in charge. Sometimes, we have to fix liability. If the police commissioner is sedate about liability, only then all this will happen, he said.